in terms of the National Football League, your history involved with the broadcasting of it is deep, and I'm not just talking about the couple of years that I was thrilled to be a colleague of yours on NFL Network for Thursday Night Football. I'm talking about the creation of Sunday morning NFL
back in the
studio
old days.
shoes. Yeah, and you know, obviously,
you know what I tell my kids. I call them my kids. They're grown adults now,
right.
But they are my kids. You know, they don't remember it very well, but the shows that now have 5 and 6 people on, we used to do alone.
You did it right, like, because again, so much talk is of the Musburger and Jimmy the Greek, Irv Cross, right, and Phyllis George and Jane Kennedy CBS version of things. But then you were doing Grandstand, right, yourself,
I did Grandstand first with the great Jack Buck,
right,
and then we did what was then NFL 74 or 5, somewhere in there with Lee Leonard. And then I did it alone for several years until I wound up doing it towards the back end with Mike Adamle.
Mike Adamle, right.
Remember Mike Adamle?
Of course. I remember Axthelm, too. Where did Pete get involved in that?
Pete Axthelm was basically our version of Jimmy the Greek.
Yeah.
With a lot more humor.
Yeah. And less fisticuffs, I imagine.
Yeah,
you know?
less fisticuffs. Axe was terrific. Axe had the great line. He said, you know, you have a gambling problem when you buy a paper and you find out your team lost and go buy another paper.
What was it like, though, back in the day when...
It was wild, man, because we had, you know what, you look at the cast of characters, it was not only that, but we had Don Ohlmeyer in the booth.
Right. Oh, boy.
Back there in the truck.
Smoky Tom.
And believe it or not, you're going to find this very hard to believe, back when I used to do it alone, we did not have a script.
So you were just talking about games that were coming up later that day and Ohlmeyer's in your ear and stuff like that?
We'd say, you know what, let's run the tease, and I'll come up and I'll talk for 45 seconds and throw it to the first site, and while they're vamping, we'll talk about what we'll do next. And that's what we'd do. And while they were vamping, then we'd say, when you come out of this, give me 30 seconds and I'll get to our first piece, which is such and such. And that's what we'd do.
Who was the lead voice back then? Was that Emberg, the lead voice on NBC at the time?
I'm trying to think. Would have been Charlie Jones or Emberg.
Or it could have been Gowdy. Was Kurt Gowdy still at it at that point in time?
Kurt wasn't part of it. I had worked with Kurt, but I don't think Kurt was doing NFL by 74 or 5. I could be wrong. It might have been Enberg.
I remember Enberg and Charlie Jones and Don Criqui and Marv. I mean, those were...
Aldir Regattas. Right. Bob Costas was with us at the time. Also, Washington, what was his first name, out of Stanford, the little wide receiver, number 8.
Oh, man, this is, I love this stuff because, again, Brian, I'm serious.
Trumpy, remember we had Bob Trumpy? Of course,
you know, Emberg and Trumpy and you know, Merlin Olsen eventually joining, you know, Father Murphy. Yep. You know, I think about this a lot, and I've said this to Musburger when I've spoken to him, Bryant, that when I'm sitting in this chair, I just have 3 guys to my left, but there are shows with 5, 6. I think about it all the time. That
I know, and it's funny. You know what's really hilarious, Rich? And this was up until a couple of years ago when Brett moved to Vegas. Brett and I lived down the street from each other in Florida for a time.
When you were doing these shows together, or after that? That was after all
after that.
Oh boy,
it was in recent years.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.